All right. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going deep, really deep into risk management competencies.
Oh, sounds exciting.
It is. It's all about what makes for a truly successful, risk management setup.
Okay, and what's guiding us on this deep dive?
We've got this great article by Pritesh Biswas. It's really thorough. It covers everything: technical skills, behavioral skills, career paths. We even get into how organizations can build up these competencies,
So we're giving everyone a roadmap to success in risk management.
That's the mission, to help you understand what it takes, what skills you need to really excel in this field. I mean, it's no secret having a team of top-notch risk professionals is mission critical these days.
Absolutely, and this article really drives that point home. Strong risk management goes way beyond just policies and software, right?
Right.
It boils down to the people, the individuals who are driving those processes.
That makes sense.
And what I found fascinating is it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
The ideal skill set, it really has to be tailored to the specific organization.
You mean like their size or the industry they're in?
Exactly. Their size, industry, the culture, the whole nine yards. Yep. And it's a mix, right? You need the hard skills, the technical management stuff.
The what, so to speak.
The what. But then there's the how.
The behavioral side.
The behavioral skills, those are crucial too.
Yeah, it seems like businesses are facing more and more challenges these days. The global economy, political stuff, technology changing so fast.
Oh, absolutely. And the article highlights this constant state of flux. It makes things so much more complex.
Yeah, much harder to manage risks, I'd imagine.
Exactly. And that's why having skilled risk professionals is, well, it's essential now.
It's not a luxury anymore.
It's the foundation for resilience. For not just surviving, but thriving in this unpredictable world.
Okay, so we're talking about ERM, right? Enterprise Risk Management.
Right. And ERM itself has really evolved.
In what way?
It's gone from just numbers and worst case scenarios to something much bigger.
Yeah, just spreadsheets.
Exactly.
Huh.
It's now integrated into the strategic thinking of an organization.
You mean it's more connected to the big picture?
Exactly. And it requires collaboration. We're talking across all departments: compliance, operations, finance, you name it, and communication with leadership, the board, everyone.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So people skills are becoming even more important for CROs and other risk leaders.
Right. People skills, emotional intelligence. The article emphasizes this, especially for CROs. Think about it. They have to articulate the risk appetite.
Yeah, that fine line between taking risks and being cautious.
Exactly. And they need to understand the uncertainties, the inherent risks within the business model itself.
So it's a tough job, finding people with both the technical and the soft skills.
It is, and the article actually points out there's a real shortage of experienced senior risk management candidates.
Oh, wow. So the demand is high.
Very high. And it's leading to companies looking outside the traditional talent pool.
Interesting. So they might hire someone with a different background, but strong leadership skills.
Exactly. Someone who can learn the ropes, but it does create challenges, especially in developing economies where that expertise might be even scarcer.
Yeah, makes sense. So the article then dives into different career levels in risk management. It uses a really interesting framework.
Yeah, I like how they keep it practical. They don't get bogged down with specific job titles.
Right, because those can vary a lot.
All the time. Instead, they have these 4 levels, right? Leadership, senior, management, and support.
Ah, so a clear progression path.
Yes, and the key as you move up, you need more knowledge, a deeper understanding of risk management principles and standards.
So at the support level, someone's just starting out, right?
Exactly. They might be brand new to the field, maybe a risk management assistant, a junior analyst, or providing admin support.
And then they move up to management.
Right. And there, they've got a solid understanding of the core concepts.
They're putting it into practice.
Exactly. They could be a risk analyst, risk consultant, risk management officer.
And what about the senior level?
Now they're really shaping the risk strategy.
Taking more ownership.
Definitely. They're refining policies, procedures, ensuring it all works across different teams, senior risk manager, head of department, those kinds of roles.
And finally, the leadership level. This is where the big decisions are made, right?
Right, the top tier. They have the deepest expertise. They're setting the overall strategy, advising the board, the chief risk officer, head of risk management for a whole organization.
It's a great overview of how a career in risk management can develop. Now, the article then talks about technical skills, and it mentions this thing called PML, but
Yeah, we'll skip the PML details since the article doesn't go too deep into it.
Right, but it does give us these 4 functional areas for technical skills. So let's start with insights and context.
Okay, insights and context is all about understanding the bigger picture.
The forces that shape the risk landscape.
Exactly what's happening inside the organization, outside the organization, everything.
So it's not just about knowing the risks themselves, but understanding the whole context.
Precisely. And it's divided into 3 parts. First, risk management principles and practice.
Okay. The foundations.
The fundamentals, knowing the theories, the processes, the tools, and this evolves as you go up those career levels, right?
So at a lower level, it might be about knowing the different types of risks, but at a higher level.
It's about advocating for risk management as a core part of strategy.
Right, making sure it's integrated into everything the company does. What's the next part of insights and context?
Organizational environment. This is all about the inner workings.
The culture.
Yes, the culture, the values, how decisions are made, and how all of that affects risk management.
So a support person might just be explaining how the company's mission relates to its risk practices, but a leader
would be advising the board on how the culture and vision impact the whole risk strategy.
Right, a much bigger scope. And lastly, under insights and context, we have external operating environment.
Right, this is where we look outside.
The world beyond the company.
Exactly. Regulations, market trends, the economy, even geopolitics, all these external forces that can affect the organization.
A management person might be identifying specific external factors that pose a risk, but a leader
would be making sure the whole risk management approach is aligned with that external environment.
Wow, they're thinking on a global scale. So that's insights and context. Next up is strategy and performance.
Okay, now we're getting into actually developing and implementing the risk strategy.
Putting those insights into action.
Exactly. And it has 4 parts. First, risk management strategy and architecture.
So building the actual framework.
The roadmap. For leadership, it's crafting that comprehensive strategy, optimizing the risk appetite.
Making sure the company's comfortable with the level of risk it's taking.
Right. But at the support level, it's more about understanding how that framework is built.
Okay, the nuts and bolts. What's the next piece of strategy and performance?
Risk management policy and procedures.
The practical guidelines.
Exactly. Creating and implementing policies, procedures, making sure everyone's on the same page.
So a senior person would be implementing those detailed plans, making sure the policy works across the board.
Right, and a management person might be explaining the benefits of those policies to their colleagues.
Making sure everyone understands why it's important. The third piece here is risk culture and appetite.
This is huge. It ties into what we were saying earlier about ERM evolving.
The human element.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where everyone's aware of risks.
Where it's part of the everyday thinking.
Right. And defining that risk appetite, that sweet spot between caution and opportunity.
Leaders play a big role in shaping that culture.
They set the tone from the top, but everyone needs to understand and act according to that risk appetite.
And finally, under strategy and performance, we have risk performance and reporting.
How are we doing? How do we measure that? That's what this is about.
Making sure we're tracking our progress.
Exactly. Developing systems to measure performance and then reporting that to stakeholders.
Leadership might be setting up those systems while support is
helping gather the data, understanding the basics of measurement and reporting.
Makes sense. Okay, we've covered 2 functional areas. On to the third, risk management process.
The heart of it all. This is about the daily work of managing those risks.
The hands-on stuff.
Exactly. And we've got 2 parts here. Risk assessment, which is all about identifying, analyzing, evaluating those risks.
So figuring out what could go wrong and how bad it could be.
Right. Management might be using different tools and techniques to assess risks, while support might be
contributing data, participating in workshops, helping with the process.
Exactly. And then there's risk treatment.
Okay, so this is where we take action.
Right. What are we going to do about these risks? This is where we develop and implement strategies to manage them based on that risk appetite we talked about.
So a senior person might be making sure those strategies are working, adapting them as needed.
Right. Keeping an eye on things. And management is more focused on implementing those specific controls.
Okay, making sure things are actually happening. Now for our 4th and final functional area, organizational capability.
This is about building a strong, adaptable risk management function.
Making sure the whole team is set up for success.
Exactly, and it starts with communication and consultation.
Making sure everyone's in the loop.
Right, having clear channels for sharing information and getting feedback from stakeholders.
Leaders set the tone for communication. Transparency is key.
But everyone's responsible for communicating clearly within their roles.
Next, we have change management. This seems particularly important now, given how fast things change.
Oh, absolutely. Being able to adapt to change is crucial. Leaders have to make sure risk management is baked into any big changes.
Right. So if the company's going through a merger or restructuring, risk needs to be considered.
Exactly. And other levels support that change, making sure it happens smoothly, managing any risks that pop up.
And finally, under organizational capability, we have people management.
This is the glue that holds it all together.
Making sure the team has the right skills.
Exactly. Leaders have to make sure they've got the right people, the right mix of skills and experience.
And everyone's responsible for their own development.
Right. Taking initiative, learning, growing, contributing to those team and organizational goals.
Wow, that's a really detailed look at the technical skills needed. It really shows how much depth there is to risk management.
Right. It's not just one skill set. It evolves as you go up the ladder. Now, the article then talks about personal behavioral skills. This is the how alongside the what of those technical skills.
Okay, so it's not just knowing what to do, but how to do it effectively.
Exactly. These are the personal traits that make you a successful risk professional.
Things like communication, leadership, problem solving.
Exactly. And the article highlights that these aren't just innate qualities. They're skills that can be developed.
You can learn them and get better over time.
Exactly. Okay, so they list 6 key personal skills. The first is courage and confidence.
Essential in a field where you might have to deliver tough messages sometimes.
Right. It's about making tough decisions, voicing your opinion even when it's hard.
And being willing to admit when you're wrong.
Definitely. Learning from mistakes, taking responsibility, but also standing by your decisions when you know they're right.
Next up, influence and impact. This seems vital for anyone in risk management.
It's about getting people on board, persuading them, motivating them to act on risk information.
So being able to communicate effectively, build relationships, understand how the organization works.
Exactly. Adapting your communication style, using your knowledge to build credibility, being persuasive.
The third skill is integrity, ethics, and values.
This should be a given for any professional, but in risk management, it's even more important.
Because it's all about trust, right?
Right. People need to trust your judgment. So it's about sticking to ethical codes, being honest, being transparent, acting in a way that builds that trust.
Okay, next we have innovation and catalyst. This seems a bit unexpected.
Yeah, you might think risk management is all about preventing things, but innovation is crucial too.
Finding new solutions, being proactive.
Exactly. Thinking outside the box, encouraging new ideas, being willing to change things for the better.
The fifth skill is building capability.
This is about continuous learning, both for yourself and for others.
So identifying your own development needs, but also helping your colleagues to grow.
Exactly. Sharing knowledge, mentoring others, creating a culture of learning within the risk management team.
And lastly, we have collaboration and partnering.
This is key for that integrated approach to ERM we talked about.
Breaking down those silos.
Exactly. Building relationships, understanding different perspectives, being able to negotiate and work together effectively.
And the article makes a great point. The importance of these skills depends on your role and the organization.
Right. A support person might not need the same level of influencing skills as a CRO who's talking to the board.
And they give specific examples of what's expected at each level.
Really helpful.
Yeah.
And they even have this framework for assessing behavioral skills. You know, are you meeting expectations, exceeding them, or falling short?
Useful for both individuals and organizations. Now, once you understand the skills you need, the next step is figuring out where the gaps are.
Right. What are we missing? The article talks about identifying and addressing competency gaps.
And they mention two main approaches, skills audits and interviews.
So a skills audit is a really thorough way to assess the current skills within the team or even the whole organization.
You compare that to what you ideally need and you can see the gaps.
Exactly. And interviews, those are helpful for hiring new people, making sure they have the right skills.
Or for performance reviews, figuring out where someone needs more development.
Right. It's all about understanding where you stand. Once you know the gaps, then you can build a plan. The article calls it a competency roadmap and upskilling.
So it's like a strategy for developing those skills.
Exactly. And they use a project management approach.
Okay, so it's structured with clear steps.
Right. You start by understanding the gaps and setting a budget.
Making sure you have the resources.
Then you prioritize which skills are most important right now.
Based on the organization's biggest risks. Right.
Exactly. And then you figure out the best way to develop those skills.
The best methods, the best training.
Right. And then, of course, you implement the plan. You make sure it's integrated into everything the organization's doing.
It's not just a document, it's actually happening.
And you set deadlines, you review progress, make sure it's working. Upskilling is a key part of all of this.
It's about making sure people have the skills they need.
Right. Not just for their current role, but for where the organization's going.
And the article mentions a bunch of upskilling methods.
Oh, yeah. Everything from formal academic programs to, shorter courses and workshops.
There's something for everyone.
And on-the-job training, that's so valuable. Learning from experienced colleagues.
And they specifically highlight coaching and mentoring.
Right. And they even provide definitions from the CIPD.
So coaching is about helping someone identify their own strengths and areas for development.
Right. It's very self-driven. And mentoring is more about an experienced person sharing their wisdom.
Both can be super valuable for growth and development. Now, the article then switches gears a bit and talks about the role of a facilitator in risk workshops.
The facilitator. Such an important role.
Making sure those workshops are actually productive.
Right. Guiding the discussion, managing personalities, making sure everyone gets a chance to contribute.
They mentioned 3 styles: directive, collaborative, and supportive.
And a good facilitator can switch between those styles, depending on the situation.
Being flexible is key. And they list a bunch of traits and skills for effective facilitators.
Working with groups, staying positive, managing disagreements, being organized, keeping everyone engaged. So much.
It sounds like they need to be a master of communication and people skills.
Absolutely. And then, when it comes to running those workshops, there are 3 main steps. Planning, the workshop itself, and then following up on the results.
So planning is crucial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to know what you're trying to achieve, who needs to be there, what information they need beforehand.
And then the workshop itself, it needs to be engaging, productive, leading to clear decisions.
Right. It shouldn't just be a boring meeting. People should feel like they're contributing.
And then you capture those decisions, those actions in a log.
And make sure everyone knows what they need to do next. Okay, next up, the article talks about analytical skills in risk management.
And they make a good point. It's not just about being a math whiz.
Right. It's about logical thinking, being able to see patterns, interpret data, and explain it clearly.
These skills are used for reports, for training, for those workshops we talked about.
Exactly. It's about making sense of information and communicating it effectively.
And then they touch on big data.
Big data. It's everywhere these days. The article actually has a definition from the Oxford Dictionary.
So it's these huge sets of data that can be analyzed to reveal patterns and trends.
Right. And it's a big opportunity for risk management. You can get so much more insight than before.
But there are challenges too, right?
Definitely. You need to make sure the data is accurate, that you're using it ethically, that you're protecting privacy.
It's a powerful tool, but you have to use it responsibly.
Exactly. Okay, moving on. The article talks about communication, reporting, and presentations.
These are all about influencing people, getting them to understand and care about risk.
Right, and it emphasizes the importance of those influencing skills. Active listening, understanding group dynamics, negotiation.
It also makes a distinction between informal and formal communication.
Right, so informal might be just everyday conversations or workshops.
And formal would be those big reports or presentations to leadership.
Exactly, and they highlight the power of storytelling in both cases.
Making it relatable, making people connect with the information.
Right, and they have these 5 C's for formal communication: clear, concise, logical, believable, and thorough.
A good checklist to make sure your message is effective.
And they even talk about how to find risk information in an annual report.
Giving people the tools to understand those complex documents. Okay, the article then talks about complacency versus crisis.
This is a good one. It's about finding that balance. Not being too relaxed about risks, but also not panicking over everything.
Right, because risks can emerge slowly or suddenly. It's hard to always be at the right level of alertness.
Exactly. And the article points out that ERM can help.
Having that big picture view can help you make smarter, quicker decisions.
Right, because you're seeing the risks across the whole organization. You can prioritize effectively.
And it emphasizes that ERM is not just about avoiding bad things.
It's about creating value, seizing opportunities.
Right. It's about taking smart risks that can help the company grow. And finally, the article gives advice on how risk professionals can show their value.
Right. How do you prove that you're making a difference?
And they give 3 main ways: making an impact, making a difference, and engagement and commitment.
So making an impact is about showing how risk management adds value.
It's not just a box-ticking exercise.
Exactly. It's about Protecting the organization, helping it make better decisions.
Making a difference is about being involved in those strategic discussions, providing that risk perspective.
Right. Making sure risk is considered in those big decisions. And engagement and commitment, that's about being a reliable partner.
Being there for the organization, building those relationships.
Exactly.
Right.
And the article reiterates that building trust is key.
Especially with leadership, you need to have that strong relationship.
Right. They need to know they can rely on you. And it all comes back to development, constantly learning and growing.
Both those technical skills and those behavioral skills.
Because the world of risk is always changing, you need to keep up.
Well, this has been an incredibly deep dive into risk management competencies.
We covered a lot.
We did, and it's clear that risk management is a complex and evolving field.
But it's also incredibly important.
Absolutely. It's about helping organizations navigate uncertainty, make smarter decisions, and achieve their goals.
It's about protecting value and creating value.
And it all starts with having the right people with the right skills.
Skilled and dedicated risk professionals, they're the key.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope you found this discussion helpful. Now, as you think about your own work, your own organization, which of these skills do you think are most important?
That's a great question.
And how can you develop those skills to make your organization even more resilient and successful?
Food for thought.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.